Season 3 of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina just expanded the lore of the series into the otherworldly. Not only did Sabrina get to venture straight into Pandemonium in the heart of hell, we also got to see the brewing power struggle of gods and witches in the wake of Lucifer's disappearance. I'm Whitney Van Laningham, and today we're going to break down Season 3 of Sabrina, from hell to the new forms of magic, and of course that crazy finale. Before something wicked this way comes, I want to give a shout out to our patrons over on Patreon, including our super nerd sponsor of the day, Charles Sheed. If you're interested in supporting the Nerdwire Coven, check out the link in the description and see if any reward tiers work for you. You can also head over to our TeePublic storefront if you want to support Nerdwire and get fully licensed fan tees. Now bring on the Hellfire! Almost immediately this season, we get to visit hell. Like the hell depicted in Dante's Inferno, CAOS Hell is comprised of 9 inner circles, each designed to torture various flavors of sinners. Some of these circles can even exist in their own time loops and pockets, as we see in the Pontius Pilate episode. One of the most notable features of hell is that it has elements that have in one way or another made their way into human art and pop culture. Early on, Ms. Wardwell suggests that authors, artists, and poets have either been to hell or had a peek into hell through some sort of window.
How could that be possible? Some of the world's greatest artists have used hell as their subject in such an authentic way. It feels as if they somehow must have visited the place.
From what we've seen, Dante, Euronymous Bosch, and the Wizard of Oz's author L. Frank Baum all have interacted with hell in this manner. Something interesting to note is that this builds off of an idea set up in the Season 2 episode Dr. Cerberus' House of Horrors. In the episode, there's a potential future where Harvey rooms with an artist that paints visions of hell that plague him. The very same roommate also was haunted by visions of the void and eldritch gods that we'll get into later in the video. Hell is surprisingly more bureaucratic than the pure monarchy that one would expect. The throne of king or queen must be held by power, but also political approval from the plague kings and other infernal highborns. With 666 signatures, a challenger can contest claim to the throne. Caliban does this, and his challenge is to collect the unholy regalia, a trio of historic items that gained importance for their role in the persecution and betrayal of Jesus. According to infernal law, if anyone is able to collect all 3 items, they can immediately rule hell, regardless of Morningstar blood right. Presumably this is because together, these items have nigh unstoppable magical power. The first item in the unholy regalia we see is King Herod's crown, which also happens to be guarded by King Herod himself. King Herod was the ruler of Judea who was threatened when he heard a prophecy about Jesus, son of God, being born into his kingdom. To maintain absolute authority, he ordered the slaughter of all boys under the age of 2 within the vicinity of Bethlehem. This would be known as the Massacre of Innocents. The next item of the unholy regalia is Pontius Pilate's bowl, guarded by a zombified Roman centurion. Pilate was the Roman official who judged the trial of Jesus and sentenced him to crucifixion. Afterwards, he symbolically washed his hands of guilt in the regalia's bowl. The last item of the unholy regalia are the coins Judas was paid to sell out Jesus, guarded by Vlad the Impaler, the ruthless 15th century ruler of Romania that would become the inspiration for Count Dracula. Obviously, Vlad is a full-fledged vampire in CAOS, as is Judas, who is in canon the father of all vampires. This holds some basis in real Hebrew legends, which theorize that God cursed Judas with an aversion to light, silver, and crucifixes for his betrayal. The key to the easy way of unlocking the unholy coins with a traitorous kiss stems from the fact that Judas kissed Jesus on the cheek to signal his identity to Roman authorities. Now, Sabrina's challenger Caliban has some interesting lore behind him. The name Caliban comes from a Shakespeare play, The Tempest. In the play, Caliban isn't made of clay, but he is a half-human, half-fish monster born from a witch and potentially the very devil himself. Caliban is enslaved in the story, but is the rightful heir and ruler of the island the story takes place on. Obviously, Caliban doesn't share much with his namesake, as he's more of an infernal golem made from clay from the pit of hell. But this potential parentage and claim to the throne might be fodder for some solid fan theories. Perhaps the most enjoyable aspect of this season is seeing all the new types of magic that appear outside of hell, in the power struggle it's created on Earth in Satan's absence. Without Sabrina officially coronated as queen and Lucifer doling out his magic to the Church of Night, there's an opportunity for older magical sources to make a play for dominance. Most prominently featured of these new magics is the earth magic of the pagans. Paganism is a term to describe the polytheistic sects that came about during the rise of Christianity. The word was initially intended as a derogatory shorthand for these religions, as it implied that the belief in several gods of varying domains was for peasants. Many pagan religions have a basis in worshiping the earth and nature. Traditionally, pagans would pray to a Mother Earth deity, but it's interesting that in CAOS, the center of the pagans' prayers is the Green Man. My guess is that this is to add further significance to the matriarchal society Zelda creates. The depictions of the leafy green man span across many cultures, and can even be found on medieval church architecture. As a symbol of nature, the green man shares origins with the Woodwoes, or Wild Man of the Woods, a male earth spirit that is often depicted as a satyr. The green man also overlaps with the Wiccan horned god, another goat-inspired deity that coincides with interpretations of Satan. Perhaps the best-known satyr is the Greek god Pan, who serves as the ringleader of the carnival in CAOS. According to Greek myth, Pan is a god of nature, music, shepherds, and mountains. He's also said to be the source of panic and debilitating fear. While not exactly known for inducing madness, this fact is likely where his maddening pan flute spell stems from, and why he's able to turn Agatha against her sisters. According to my research, Pan is the only god to straight up die in Greco-Roman myths, and is speculated that his demise signified the rise of Christianity in Rome. It's fitting then that the first godlike being to die on this show is Pan. Filling out the ranks of the pagans is also a Gorgon and the witch Circe, other prominent staples in Greek mythology. Gorgons are a whole race of snake-haired monsters in Greek myth, but Medusa is one of the most famous. A notable trait of Gorgons is their ability to petrify humans in stone with their gaze. In the finale, Harvey tells Roz that he's seeing Clash of the Titans, a movie depicting the story of Perseus, the hero who slayed Medusa. In the story, Perseus used his shield as a mirror to look at Medusa without being turned to stone. Medusa's severed head was then used by Perseus and Athena to petrify their enemies, as it retained its mystical properties. This is why Roz suggests that they bag the head for later. Like in the show, Circe is a witch that turns men into animals, usually pigs. While some stories say that her mother is a water nymph, others claim that she's the daughter of Hecate. Hopefully that doesn't make it too awkward for Hilda and her new patron goddess. Hecate is a Greek goddess closely associated with witchcraft. She holds domain over boundaries, doorways, and the passage into other realms. This is why Zelda is able to invoke her powers to resurrect Hilda from the netherworld before she fully passes on. She's often depicted with three faces: the maiden, the mother, and the crone. The magic that Zelda and the Church of Night find power in not only come from Hecate herself, but also from the combined ancestry of all witches. While Hecate represents witches in all their life phases, Zelda drawing from ancestry is a trick inspired by her new girlfriend Mambo Marie's faith. Mambo Marie, or High Voodoo Priestess Marie, is a practitioner of Haitian voodoo. Like other forms of voodoo, Haitian voodoo originated in West Africa, but eventually merged with Christian beliefs over time. This is why Zelda is initially bothered by Prudence inviting the Catholic priestess into the Church of Night. Haitian voodoo honors the Christian god, but believes that ancestral spirits guide and protect people in their day-to-day life. Voodoo has a heavy emphasis on worshiping your ancestors and calling forth their spirits, which is exactly how the Church of Night draws power from Hecate in the finale. In this sense, the magic is compounded across generations and can transcend the barriers of time. But Mambo Marie isn't the only witch bringing new powers to Season 3. When Zelda leads the coven in summoning the Hedge Witches of Greendale, a brood of witches with a slew of different powers arrive to help ward off the pagans. Let's go over them! Hedge Witches are traditionally known as outliers in the witching world. Instead of belonging to a coven, these witches are often hermits, choosing to practice their earth-based magic in solitude. In the case of Sabrina, these Hedge Witches are living off the witch grid either because they've been banished from their former covens, or they're choosing to live solo. For example, one of the witches who shows up is Gryla, who we met in A Midwinter's Tale. According to Icelandic Christmas folklore, Gryla is a giantess who devours children. She has 13 sons, aka the Yule Lads, who are all mischievous pranksters. But the Gryla we know in Sabrina is a little different. She sacrificed her child to save the last of her coven from starvation, and ever since, she's been collecting ghost children to add to her brood of Yule Lads. The Yule Lads in Sabrina seem to be just as troublemaking as the ones from Icelandic folklore, but aren't Gryla's biological children. Next, we have Pesta, the Witch of Disease. Historically, Pesta is the embodiment of the bubonic plague, but also seems to represent pestilence in the show. Then we have Sycorax. Originally, Sycorax is an unseen character in Shakespeare's The Tempest, who also happens to be the mother of Caliban in the play. See? Told you there might be some crazy fan theories to come out of his name. She's described as an ancient witch so powerful that she was banished to an island for practicing her sorcery. In this show, however, Sycorax is a river witch with no relation to the Clay King of Hell. Perhaps her aquatic powers were inspired by the island home of the Tempest Sycorax, but like Caliban, that seems to be where the similarities to the Tempest end. Finally, we do get to see two other witches, but alas, they're uncredited in the show as far as my research has turned up. One of them appears to be some kind of forest witch, and the other reminds me a little bit of the witch who led Hansel and Gretel astray with her sweets. And if anyone needs to lay off the candy and switch to a whitening toothpaste, it's this witch. We have one last form of magic introduced this season, and it's looking to be the big draw of part 4. I'm talking about the chaotic magic Father Blackwood taps into that appears to be inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's horror novels. Signified by the Cthulhu-esque monsters Blackwood deals with, this magic appears to draw its power from ancient eldritch beings older and even more sinister than Lucifer. In Lovecraftian mythos, these horrific cosmic deities ruled long before reality was established and exist outside of space and time, but beckon men to free them into our dimension. The primary being Blackwood seems to pray to is known simply as the Void, which was also name-dropped back in Season 2 by Harvey's roomie at art school.
Who comes to you? Harbingers of the void, old ones, demons, gods.
The Void will seemingly be a representation of the state of the absolute emptiness that exists beyond time, which is likely how it's able to harness time magic in the form of an egg. Okay, now let's try to Hulk-splain the thing that's on everyone's mind, that finale! Decades after the apocalypse, Sabrina gets a visit in hell from none other than herself. Sabrina 2 switches places with Sabrina 1, and quickly explains that Sabrina must go back in time to save her loved ones. Before she goes, however, Sabrina 2 warns her that after she saves Greendale, she must return to this point in time and switch places with her again, or else the time loop will never close and it will cause a cosmic catastrophe. When Sabrina returns to Hell to gather the Holy Regalia, she informs the Guardians that, surprise, she has even more power this time around. This is because Hell is completely empty now, so it's easier for Sabrina to tap into the celestial powers Daddy Lucifer, Lilith, and the other powerful beings in Hell used to possess. My biggest surprise was that Herod the Centurion and Judas' son were all totally cool with Sabrina melting down the crown, the bowl, and the silver to make that morning star. But, like she said, this was the moment that the Guardians were protecting the regalia for. It was time to break mystical historic artifacts in case of emergency. The spell that Sabrina uses, combined with the energy vortex created by the moving stones and the swinging morning star, sends her back in time to decades ago Greendale, just in time to run the pagans out of town and save her loved ones. Alright, this next part is gonna get a little tricky to explain, so bear with me. Sabrina Prime returns to the moment in time right before she returns to Judas and hands off the silver to that trickster Caliban. There, she runs into herself just in time to warn herself to leave Caliban in the 9th circle and get the heaven back to Lilith, Lucifer, and the kings of hell with the silver to win the quest. Afterward, Sabrina Prime is supposed to return to Sabrina 2 in the 9th circle to close the time loop, but she decides not to. Instead, she proposes a new plan. Instead of closing the time loop, she'll simply switch places with the version of Sabrina that hasn't lost the quest yet. Sabrina Prime believes that this will prevent the time loop from even being created. But if Sabrina Prime fails to return to Sabrina 2, there will have been no way for Sabrina 2 to free her in the first place. If it sounds like it doesn't make sense, that's because Sabrina Prime created a time paradox! Not making any logical sense is literally what that means. Essentially, Sabrina has created a fractured timeline that splits us from the original timeline, meaning that time in CAOS isn't bound to a single time continuum like in, say, Harry Potter, where time travel is preordained and doesn't change anything, but is more similar to the diverging time travel seen in Avengers Endgame, where time loops have to be closed or else whole multiverses could face instability. And with the looks of next season, that instability is almost guaranteed. My guess is that this fractured timeline will cause a tear in reality that the Void will take advantage of to break into our reality. In order to close the loop, we're gonna have to have a battle of Sabrinas that'll have to end with the 2 copies merging into one. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments what you think of all the magic introduced this season and how next season is gonna turn out. Be sure to share this video with all of your Sabrina-loving friends and click the left for more videos. Stay wicked, YouTube!